Broadcasting at 2 p.m. from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and airing in the mornings at 5 a.m. on WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk where facts matter. Welcome to the Gailey Show, the only daily LGBTQ progressive news and talk show in the country. I'm your host, John Parker. It is our weekly culture and entertainment show. What do we have for you today? In the second half hour, my executive producer, Jim Pounds, will join me because we have some reviews for you. Pee Wee Herman as himself on HBO Max. Liza, a truly terrific, absolutely true story on PBS and Prime Video, and Hacks Season 3, also on HBO Max. But up first, history is being made again as Keith Stern's newest book, Queers in History Returns, just dropped this week on May 27th. It is the follow-up to his original groundbreaking and perennial bestseller, Queers in History, originally published in 1993. Get this, on diskettes and CD-ROM. The kids today have no idea what I just said. Keith Stern has been captivating audiences with the life stories of prominent figures for nearly 3 decades, reaching millions through both print and online platforms. Also an accomplished photographer, Stern's work has been featured in the New York Times, the LA Times, the Guardian, and other newspapers, as well as several books, including Lonely Planet Travel Guides. Stern is a pioneer in the digital space since 1997. He has collaborated with none other than Sir Ian McKellen on the actor's autobiographical website, McKellen.com. His portfolio includes groundbreaking websites and social media for Sean Astin, Andy Serkis, Spinal Tap, and more. This is only a partial biography, by the way. His historical novel, Freezing Time, was commissioned for film by actor-director Andy Serkis. Keith, welcome to The Gailey Show.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me, John.
Okay, 755 pages, 1,001 entries, hundreds of historical photographs covering 5,000 years of history from 2450 BC to the present, chronicling the lives and legacies of all sorts of LGBTQ plus individuals, but no CD-ROMs this time?
Well, don't give me any ideas. It was so easy putting that diskette together. And, it took me about 2 weeks to get 100 people on that diskette and get it into the stores. But it's been a bit of a slog for the remaining 31 years. And I just spent the past 7 months really intensively rewriting everything, bringing everything up to date, adding in as many people as I thought I could handle in there. Got to a little over 1,000. And I think for the first time, I think the book is pretty much the way I want it to be.
So I read that the original vision for Queers in History was that one day it just might become obsolete because, countries will have fully embraced LGBTQ contributions. And the US, certainly that hasn't happened. But you can't just write something like this overnight. So you said the past 7 months, but had you been collecting autobiographical information over the past 30 years, sort of as an ongoing basis? Or was this I need to do this now, let's get started?
Oh, I'm a collector. I have boxes filled with newspaper clippings, magazine clippings, notes. So although I was able to update the electronic version pretty easily. So that went from about 100 people to 400 people. And then when we published it as a paperback in 2010, I was pretty much done with updating because it's very difficult to update a book. Got up to a little of about 900 people in that book. Struggled to get to 1,000, but didn't make it. And that was a bit intense too, because that was a year and a half working with 4 editors at the publisher just to get the book done. And then that, like I said, that we worked on that in 2009, 2010. And at that moment, it seemed like the floodgates just opened and so many people started coming out. It just kind of spun my head around. I thought I can't keep up with it. So there it remained for almost 16 years. And last year I published a memoir about early days of computers in Hollywood and how they affected the movie business, and called For Entertainment Only. So oddly enough, that, as they say, when you publish one book, it starts sales on the other books. And people started buying this 16-year-old version of Queers in History. And it was a bit humiliating to me to think that they were reading a book that was so out of date and which, wasn't exactly the way I wanted it to be in the first place. So I buckled down and the result is published this week.
Wow. The entries are delightful, and that they're
Thank you.
concise. They're fun mini bios of each person, and then at the end you include like further reading if folks want to like learn more about a particular person. But I imagine you could fill a book on just one of these people. So talk to me about your research process and distilling this information down into these really succinct, fun bios.
Well, I try not to include anybody in the book that isn't interesting. So there are no boring stories. It's 1,001 interesting people. The boring people aren't there. There weren't too many that were really boring, because once you look into a person's life, I mean, they're bound to have done something interesting. One hopes. And so my intention is that anybody who thinks they know about these people will learn something that they didn't know before, and it'll be fun and interesting. And I'm not an academic. I'm not a professor or anything. I'm just an amateur historian. So I can get away with a lot of stuff in terms of jokes and snide remarks and innuendo. So that makes the book rather unique. It certainly had a purpose, and I thought it would serve that purpose rather quickly, because when I started, everybody was telling me, "You're crazy. These people weren't gay," And even some of the early reviews that appreciated the books, I always got good reviews, but they'd always say, "Well, you can't be sure about everything in the book." But I was really careful to document everything. And so the process, once I published the book, the process was people would come up to me and say, did you know that so-and-so was gay and should be in your book? And most of the time I'd go, no, I didn't know that. So I'd have to do the research. And so, for instance, people were coming up to me at a certain point and saying, did you know that Abraham Lincoln was gay? And I thought, that's ridiculous. I grew up in the northern suburbs of Chicago. I got a pretty good education there. And as you know, Abraham Lincoln's pictures on practically every wall in that area. And I thought I knew everything I could know about Lincoln. So I figured I'd spend half an hour in the library looking things up and proving that it was just a rumor. It wasn't true, that Lincoln was happily married to Mary Todd and had children, was heterosexual. Well, to my surprise, I just learned more and more about Abraham Lincoln that seemed to indicate that indeed our 16th U.S. president was queer.
Mm-hmm.
So he has his honored place in my book. And I suppose for Lincoln, I've probably have spent, 15 solid hours of research just to pull together these facts. I've read several books, went through a lot of historical archives, old newspapers, old diaries, old books from the 19th century, just to pull together a fairly complete, I think, presentation on Abe Lincoln's sexuality. So that's my process. I get a clue from somebody else usually, and then I look into it with great skepticism, and then a lot of the time I'm proved wrong, and that they really had a place in my book, and then I had to write the thing. That's the easy part, really. Getting the facts lined up is the hard part.
Well, thank you for including that bit about Abraham Lincoln. I keep talking about him. I was going to thank you for including that, because if folks are sitting there going, wait, what, really? Okay, first of all, get Keith's book and you can see why. And then you go watch Lover of Men documentary that just came out last year. I got to interview the filmmakers, and one of the interviewees is a professor, wrote a book, Harvard, and there's like a whole conspiracy. Like, he was detailing the intense conspiracy to hide any mention that he was gay or had these relationships, multiple relationships with men. They were very clearly intimate relationships. Anyhow, we are talking with Keith Stern, author of Queers in History Returns, which just came out this week, May 27th. I did really appreciate that there were the folks that I was expecting in the excerpt rather that I was reading. Like, you'd have your big history makers, your Bayard Rustins, your Alexander the Greats, your Roy Cohns. I cannot believe I just put Bayard Rustin and Roy Cohn in the same sentence. Okay.
They're in the same book.
They're in the same book. But I love also that you've got folks that are soldiers and lawyers and authors as well, folks that I wouldn't have thought, I'm like, oh, that's interesting that they made it into the book. But the collective of it, folks may be like, oh, it's like an encyclopedia, but I really encourage folks to start from the beginning and read through, because you just begin to get this amazing wave of, oh, wait, we have been here all along. You go all the way back to 2450 BC. It just gives you this sense of collectivity and queer ancestors just from the excerpt that I read.
Right.
It's phenomenal.
Thank you. Yeah, I tried to cover the broad range, because that was my theory, was that we've been here all along, and people have, for the most part, accepted, tolerated, even venerated gay people. And, it's something that has just recently become a political issue. Well, I mean, there's always been a certain element of politics and religion on the question. But I think the big surprise is just how present queer people are everywhere and always. And like you said, I thought that the book would eventually become obsolete because people would accept this truth. All I have to do is just give them this book, let them read it, and they'll see, oh, queer people have been everywhere doing everything all along. And we would just, weren't paying it that much attention. And so I thought maybe the lifespan of the book would be about 5 years. And indeed, a lot of things did change the first 5 years that book was out. It went from, oh, Cary Grant couldn't possibly be gay or bisexual. That's ridiculous. And it went from that to everybody in the world is gay or bisexual or something. And so that kind of turned around in the around the year 2000 or so, 2005. And then the great awakening of the early 2010s, when a lot of entertainers, a lot of creative people, authors, even politicians started coming out. So again, I thought, well, the days of this book are numbered. People are just going to get bored with the subject. I thought eventually that was my purpose, was really to make it a boring topic. That why would you even talk about it? It's just an accepted fact that queer people have been around.
I'm going to have more questions for you, obviously, after this break. I do have to fit in a quick break. More with Keith Stearns when we come back. Connect with more progressive news and radio at am950radio.com and heartlandsignal.com. You are listening to The Gailey Show. Sorry to cut you off like that.
That was quick.
I know.
I thought we were 5 minutes in.
Flies by, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, just let me make a note here.
No, cut me off at will, please.
Oh, are you kidding me? I could talk to you for like an hour. There's so much here that I want to.
Yeah, I know the feeling. But
right. Oh no, finish it up.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm well known for being obsessive, and people feed me this. They'll give me a book or a record or something, and say you're going to be obsessed with this. And a lot of the times they're right. Usually lasts about a year and a half.
Thank gosh. Otherwise, we wouldn't have this. Okay, if you are ready, this second segment is only 9 minutes. So just letting you know that. It'll seem like it's gone in 30 seconds. But anything you need before we get started?
Nope.
All right. Patrick, if you're good on your end. Welcome back to The Gailey Show. I am your host, John Parker. It's about 20 minutes after the hour. We're here with Keith Stern and his newest book, Queers and History Returns, just came out this week on May 27th. Keith, so I had an excerpt and I was going through it, and obviously there were folks that I was interested in learning about, like Kukai, who was a Japanese cleric, and there was a French author, Sidonie Gabrielle Colette. There were also, though, folks I was surprised about. Like, I had no idea about Horatio Alger, which blew my mind. I'm curious for you, who surprised you when you were reading this book? Writing this
Yeah,
book. Sorry, not reading. I was reading. You were writing and researching.
I think there were a number that surprised me a lot, and it was just that what was really surprising was just how much information was available if you really wanted to find out. For instance, William Shakespeare. I mean, obviously, anybody who reads his sonnets and his plays can detect that Shakespeare had a rather broad take on sexuality, and he included gay characters, and of course, most of his sonnets, some of his poetry, was written professing his love for a young man. So these were well-known facts, but when I reviewed the standard biographies of Shakespeare, they dismissed them as just meaningless, and that he was just a creative guy. And so the surprise is when you look into it and you find all these other little known facts about them that just add up to an obviously queer person living at that time and creating those works in that from that point of view. So, I mean, I suppose I was surprised by a lot of them.
Mm-hmm. Well, what comes to mind as I'm hearing you say that is what did Hillary Clinton say? The vast right-wing conspiracy, the vast heterosexual conspiracy to, just get rid of and, make everybody seem like they're straight. It's interesting, like Christopher Marlowe, folks are fine with him being, gay and talking about that, but William Shakespeare, no, we can't talk about that. I have a question about the difference in publishing and writing versus so like the 90s and the 2020s. Very different from a technological perspective. And there are, though, some overlapping in the types of political attacks happening against the queer community between the 90s and the 2020s. I'm curious for you, from a writing and publishing perspective, was there a lot of difference between doing this in the early 90s and now, or was it completely different?
It's not completely different. But like I said, when I had when I published the diskettes, it was kind of novel because it was in electronic form.
Mm-hmm.
And that really intrigued the booksellers, even the big chains like Borders and Barnes and Nobles were really thrilled that somebody was creating an electronic product that they could put on their shelves and sell. And so more than the subject matter, even, I think, which was provocative enough, they were intrigued and very supportive of Queers in History in its early days. And I could go into practically any major city in the world and look in a bookstore window and find my discs in the window. And there were a lot of opportunities for me as somebody who came out of the entertainment business, the music business, actually, where I was a musician and in the business end of it as well, a promoter and manager. So I had a bit of a background in the entertainment business, but I also was fascinated by computers, which I didn't tell anybody about because, of course, they wouldn't want to talk to me anymore. And at that time, it was that, computers were for nerds only, and nerds were not very attractive people generally. So if I was at a party and somebody asked me what I did, if I said I worked with computers, they'd go talk to somebody else. That changed. But in the meantime, so that's one thing that changed, is that technology became a part of our everyday lives. So what do? I publish a paperback. So that was a different experience. And now I'm into the third iteration, and it just remains to be seen exactly what's going to happen. People are very excited about it, oddly enough, and I think they finally get why it's important.
Mm-hmm.
Before, it was interesting, it was intriguing, it was funny, it was fun. Now it's become a very serious matter, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't treat it as a serious matter necessarily. But for instance, the first version, the paperback, I thought covered trans people pretty well. I had, out of 900 people, I had probably 50 or 60 that could be identified as trans. I thought that was pretty good coverage, but I heard from the trans community that it was seriously inadequate. So I've made a real effort in this version to really make up for that, not by overemphasizing the role of trans people in history, but trying to bring a little bit more true perspective to how they, like all queer people, they've been around forever. They've been variously accepted and crucified,
Mhm.
tolerated, and ignored, and some really fascinating stories. But what I look for in the stories is how these individuals coped with or took advantage of their outsider position to create their art, to create their sometimes science. I mean,
Mhm.
Alan Turing was very close to a young man, probably, and certainly loved him, and he died at a very early age. And Turing just was very distraught and started thinking about how he could perhaps stay in touch with this dead person. And this love for this young man brought him to start thinking about machines that could think, machines that could live, in a sense, preserve your thoughts forever. And it certainly impacted his pursuit of what became computer technology. So,
And that was in the biopic, by the way. And for folks, Alan Turing was basically the guy who used technology to win World War II, or really made the victory possible sooner than folks were realizing. Sorry, interrupting you, Keith.
No, that's fine. I'm glad you're adding stuff for me, and I appreciate that. And but back to the trans people, what surprised me is how their families and friends and the community at large respected them and treated them with dignity. And this goes back at least to the 1920s, where medical technology finally could start dealing with the trans people in a dignified way. It understood that gender is complex; it's not binary. The psychologists and psychiatrists could approach it as an issue that could be dealt with one way or another. And of course, medical doctors had hormones and surgery that they could start applying to make trans people more comfortable in their bodies. And so it's amazing to me. And then some of these trans people went on to become doctors themselves.
Yes. I apologize. We're gonna have to leave it there. Thank you,
Well,
Keith,
there you go.
for joining us.
You got to read the book to find out the rest.
Yes, the book is Queers in History Returns. We've included a link in our show notes and on our website for you to order your own copy. You can also head to queersinhistory.com and keithstern.net. Fitting in a break here when we come back, film and TV reviews. You're listening to The Gailey Show on AM 950 KTNF and WCPT 820.